Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special three-part series coming to you from First Century Bank Studios. We are thrilled to share an exclusive conversation between our president and CEO, Rob Barger, and legendary broadcaster, Bob Kesling. Over the next three segments, they're going to sit down to share some incredible behind-the-scenes stories, personal insights, and plenty of laughs. Let's get right to it. Here's part one.
All right, welcome listeners. I'm Rob Barger, President and CEO of First Century Bank. And today it's my distinct pleasure to sit down with a voice that Tennessee fans know very well, Bob Kesling. For decades, Bob has been had one of the best seats in college sports. He called some of the biggest moments in Tennessee athletics, traveled thousands of miles with the Vols and Lady Vols, worked alongside legendary coaches and players, and ultimately became the voice of the Vols. But today we are going to talk about Bob Kesling, the retired guy. What he's been up to, whether he actually knows.
What do you say? It's gone downhill pretty quickly.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying?
What he's been up to, whether he's actually knows how to sit still and maybe get him to share a few stories that he couldn't tell when he was behind the microphone. So, Bob, welcome.
Thanks. Good to see you, Rob.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Busy, just doing things. I've been retired now. This will be my second football season that I've been retired. And so I thought, well, there'll be some, but it's grandkids and doing honeydews and mowing grass, and it takes up a lot of time. And I've had some other stuff I've been doing too that I've been kind of shoved into being the president of the Tennessee Radio Hall of Fame because the guys on the board said, well, you'll have a little juice for a little bit, so at least people across the state might take your phone call. And that's kind of proved to be the truth. And so we've had a great time building up the Radio Hall of Fame and getting some people involved and honoring people across the state. The state of Tennessee has such a great history in music and radio.
Yes.
And you look at all the three different divisions, and each one's a little bit different. Bluegrass here in the middle of Tennessee, you get country music, and then the blues in West Tennessee, and it's all kind of blended in together. So anyway, it's been a great experience for me. So there's always things that pop up, and I get a chance to go talk to civic groups sometimes, and I work with the Boys and Girls Club here in town and also up in Greenville. So we been doing a golf tournament in Greenville for over 20 years and raising money, and we finally got the new building built there in Greenville. So you'll be impressed. You're a bank. $10.3 million, and it's paid for.
Wow.
How about that? So it's pretty good.
That is awesome.
And it's, the best thing about it is the look on the kids' face when they got into that new building. And it's got 2 basketball courts, and they've got like 4 goals on each court. So now every kid basically has their own basket. In the old place, they had 2 baskets for everybody. So they were running over each other and knocking each other down.
I bet.
So, but anyway, it's been really rewarding. And Rob, I've always kind of had the philosophy that if somebody asks you to do something that helps somebody else, you have the right to say yes. And so I've tried to do that.
That's awesome, Bob. It is. Now, tell us, recently you had a health scare. I think it was a calcified heart valve?
Yeah. And so, well, it happened, it started about 10 years ago. And so doctors said, we think that your heart valve is calcifying, but it's not a problem. Keep an eye on it. And we did, and I didn't really have any problems at all. But then in November, I was going to my car after church, and I got dizzy and couldn't keep my balance and fell. My minister, Charles Maynard, later told me, if that wasn't a sign from the guy up above, you collapse in the church parking lot, maybe you ought to go get checked. So we did, and had another little incident. And then eventually they had to replace the valve. And so we went up to Cleveland Clinic, and they did it back in February. And but I feel great. So I've been went through my rehab, did what they told me to do. But, Rob, you never know in life, good news, bad news, who's to say? And so if I would have been still doing the games, I would have said, I'm turning dizzy. I got to get through the season. I'd push forward, and who knows what would have happened. And I might not have been able to survive that. So, you look at small things, and sometimes there's a reason you get guided in different directions, and that's what happened at the Heart. So I feel fine and doing great. I've been cleared to play golf, which is probably dangerous. So I haven't picked up a club in a while. So hopefully by the next couple of weeks, I'll get out and start swinging a little bit. But everything's great. 5 grandkids, they all live in town. We have a big luncheon every Sunday, so we get to see them every week. And then we've got baseball and all kinds of stuff going on. So they play baseball and basketball, all the sports. So it's we're blessed, and we're blessed.
Well, speaking of sports, Bob, many people may not realize this, but when you first set foot on UT's campus in 1972, that's the year I was born, by the way. Not to make you feel
my
old.
other valve is clogging up on me. Did you say that?
But you came to play football as a walk-on, right, for Bill Battle.
Yeah.
Tell us what led you to the University of Tennessee.
Just dumb luck. I'd been recruited. I was an okay high school football player, nothing special. And so I was being recruited by some small schools in Ohio, like Ohio Wesleyan. Do you know what Ohio Wesleyan's mascot is? They're the Battling Bishops. So that didn't inspire me a whole lot. And but anyway, some small schools were kind of looking at, and I thought I was going to go try and play college football someplace, but I wasn't sure where. And so I had a buddy, one of my best friends in high school. His dad ran the YMCA camp that we worked at in the summer as counselors. And so he knew Ray Mears, the basketball coach here at Tennessee, when he was at Wittenberg. And so Jeff and his dad were coming down here to Tennessee to go talk to Coach Mears about maybe Jeff walking on the basketball team or being a manager, which both things happened. He made the freshman team, and then he was a manager during the Ernie and Bernie days here at Tennessee. So I came down with him. To tell you how far back it was, I-75 wasn't even completed all the way from Norris to Knoxville. So you had to get off the dam, and we're driving around. I thought we were in the wilderness. It felt like Daniel Boone, trying to get through the wilderness. And so we finally get there. But they're down at the basketball office. I said, well, I'm not going to play basketball. And I'll just walk down to the football office. So I did. And when no tape, didn't have any kind of program even to prove I even played high school football. And so I walked into Bill Battle's office, saw his secretary, and I said, what does it take to walk on the football team here? And she says, I don't know. Would you like to talk to Coach Battle? I said, sure. 5 minutes later, I'm in Coach Battle's office, and he's talking about the offense and Condridge Holloway and what a fullback would do in their offense and all these top things. And I'm just kind of mesmerized. I couldn't imagine cold calling Woody Hayes or Bo Schembechler or Bear Bryant and getting treated like this. I just thought it was fabulous. So he walked me down to the freshman running back room, and Kurt Watson, who was a great running back here, and Don McCleary, who was later the coach at UT Martin, they were the freshman running back coaches. And so they took me down there, and they put on film, and they showed me Condridge Holloway and the veer and what they're going to do and how exciting the offense was going to be. And I was going, wow, this is pretty cool. And so after a few minutes, they turned off the projector, and they walked me back down to Coach Battle's office. And he handed me a workout sheet and said that if you can get in school, and I'm sure there's probably a doubt in his mind if I could get in school, but he said, if you get in school, we'd love to have you on the football team. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I couldn't believe it was that easy. Of course, the rules back in 72 were a lot different than they are now. And it was a lot easier to be walk-on back in those days than it is now. But I was thrilled. I'm going to play in the SEC. This is going to be great. We had freshman football back. That was the last year of freshman football, because that was the first year that freshmen were eligible to play on the varsity. And so now my dad's a big Ohio State guy. He was a drum major at Ohio State with the marching band, and so he's Buckeye through and through. And so I called my dad, and I said, Dad, listen, I've had a great visit here at Tennessee. I think I'm going to walk on the football team here at Tennessee. He goes, no. If you're going to walk on someplace, you need to walk on at Ohio State. And I said, well, Dad, let me tell you something. It's going to be cheaper for me to go to Tennessee out of state than it is for me to go to Ohio State in state. And his next comment was, go Vols. And so that's how it happened. So I came down here in August. Rob, the only exposure or meetings I had with the coaching staff was that day. I hadn't talked to anyone. I check into Gibbs Hall. I don't know anybody on the team. I couldn't tell you where Chattanooga or Nashville. I couldn't even tell if they're in the state of Tennessee or not. I didn't know anything about Tennessee. And I'm in Gibbs Hall, and I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Well, I mean, why? So anyway, but I get out there, and of course, first thing they do back in those days, they try and weed you out pretty quick because they had a lot of walk-ons, but they try and weed you out. So I was bound and determined they weren't going to weed me out. And so we started playing, and I think we played 7 games that year, maybe freshman games, and I got to play quite a bit. And so it was a lot of fun, and got to, again, when you go back, how many guys can say they wore their orange shirt in Neyland Stadium and played against Notre Dame? I mean, it was the freshman team, but still, it was pretty cool.
And you were a fullback, right?
I was a fullback, yeah. Okay. Of course, now nobody has really a fullback anymore. There's kind of like a dinosaur, but yeah. So I was a fullback, and so, but it was pretty cool. But I kind of got an indication early in my career that I wasn't going to exactly. Well, they didn't expect me to be a big star in the SEC. We were playing at Vanderbilt, and we had struggled a little bit. We're in the fourth quarter, first game. And we're not doing very well. And so Bob Davis, who was the center on the 1951 national championship team, was our head freshman coach. So he calls me up to the sideline and next to him in the fourth quarter and says, "Kesling, get in there at tailback." And I'm going, tailback? Wow. What a great opportunity this is for me to come to the University of Tennessee and play tailback and score touchdowns. This is going to work out great. And so before I went into the game, I looked at Coach Davis and I said, "Coach, I got to let you know, I've never played tailback in an actual game. I played it in practice, son." And he looked at me and says, "Heck, son, I know that. You don't think we're going to give you the ball, do you?" He said, "Get in there and hit somebody. We're passing every down." I said, "All right, there we go." So Randy Wallace was our quarterback and Larry Severs was our wide receiver. And so that was a good choice to let those two guys try and connect. But we tried to stage a comeback, but we fell short. And But anyway, it was just such a great experience for me. But I knew seriously that they had already told me I was gonna redshirt, and then the next year I might be elected to get on the kickoff team, and then maybe by the time I was 3 or 4 years down the road, maybe I could have a chance to play some. But you just make those decisions. How much when you don't love it, when you look at what you had going forward, and you dreaded going to spring practice, then you probably think it's maybe time to go do something else. And that's kind of where I was. I was thinking, I'm going to be a tackling dummy for a whole year, going against the varsity every day and just getting
pounded.
Yeah, just getting pounded every single day. And I'm just thinking, is this really what I want to do? So anyway, and now looking back, you kind of wish you weren't young and dumb, and maybe some things might have been different. But you get even now you get those forks in the road, and you got to figure out which fork to take, and you take the fork, and then you try and make the best of it, and that's kind of what I did.
That's right.
But I was fortunate because I got a lot of great opportunities to do a bunch of other great stuff.
I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, so far I can't complain.
Let me ask you: for 50 years, your calendar was basically dictated by football and basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So what's it like to wake up and realize you don't have to be anywhere now, other than where your grandkids tell you?
Yeah, where they tell me to go and what I got to take. We had a Saturday one time this past season where my oldest grandson is 12. He had 3 basketball games at 3 different gyms for 3 different teams. He played on the Gresham Middle School team, he played on his rec team, and he played for a travel team at 3 different gyms. So we're running all over. So that's kind of what my Saturdays have turned into be, just kind of making sure we get all the grandkids to where they got to be. But that's probably the best thing about retirement is as long as you can stay busy. And I've told people, my wife hates it when I say this, but it's true, that she has limited me to 1 hour of Seinfeld a day. So that's the limit. Yeah, she turns the TV off after 2 episodes. And then I got to go do something else. But started taking piano lessons. So I've always wanted, my family is very musically oriented. My sister was a singer at the Metropolitan Opera in New York. So she had the best voice in the family. So I had to deal with that my whole life growing up. And then my dad, as I said, was a drum major with the Ohio State Marching Band, which is in the state of Ohio, that's the captain of the football team and the drum major of the marching band are 2 of the most popular people in the state. And then my mom was a music teacher. And so it was kind of, and my mom did a great thing when we were growing up. She said, "You might not be any good at it, but you're going to play a musical instrument. So just go pick one And so they had a string demonstration in fourth grade. Ruth Harder, I'll never forget it. She came in with all the stringed instruments, violin, viola. And so she was playing them out there. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. But the big one, the big violin, the bass, I said, that's what I want to play. So she said, does anybody think they want to try one of these instruments? So I go running down there and say, I want to play the big violin. And she said, oh, you mean the cello? I didn't know what the names were. I said, yeah, sure. So she goes to her van and brings a cello out. Well, I was, I didn't want to be embarrassed that I had the wrong name. No, that's not. So that's how I started playing the cello. And so I played it all the way through junior high school. I got up to second chair. I mean, I could play. My two best songs were Sweet Georgia Brown and Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Those are the two best ones I played. So when we got to Bach and some of that, I wasn't very good at those, but I could play those. But I enjoyed it, and what it did is it helped with, because you got both hands going and then you got to read music, so it helps you. I think it really did help me with my hand-eye coordination. I think it helped me with my football and basketball growing up.
That's interesting. So how's the piano lessons going?
Hard. Gosh, one of the hardest.
Harder than the cello?
Oh, much harder.
Yeah.
Did you ever try the piano?
Oh, a little bit, just messing around. We had one.
Well, yeah, but you got bass clef and over here, and you got treble over here, and G over here is not the same as G over here, and so I'm dealing with that. But I got through the Sly Fox last night, so I'm making progress. I'm not Billy Joel yet, but I'm working on it. But that's another thing. That keeps your mind active because it's such a challenge. A lot of people tell you the piano is so challenging. So, at night, if nothing on TV, or I try and practice every day. And so, but I'll get there at night sometimes and I'll be working on a couple of songs in my little beginner's playbook. I'm at about a sixth grade level right now playing the piano. But, an hour and a half will go by, just like that, because you're sitting there and you're working on it. So anyway, I enjoy that. So maybe one day. And my sister, this is interesting. My sister, 4 or 5 years ago, she said, you need to go take voice lessons. I said, why? She said, because the older you get, the more strain you put on your vocal cords, and you need to learn how to breathe properly. You need to use your diaphragm and don't just, just take, gasp for air. Take big deep breaths with your diaphragm. Push your diaphragm out, get a lot of air, and then push, and that'll keep you from straining your vocal cords. I said, okay. So Andy Wetzel, who used to sing the national anthem at Neyland Stadium, was a voice teacher, professor at UT, and my sister and Andy sang at the Met together. So I got it, and I knew Andy too, but I called him and told him what I wanted to do. And he said, sure. So one summer, 4 or 5 years ago, I guess it was, I'd go over to walk to the music building and take an hour singing lesson from Andy, and he'd teach me how to breathe and all that kind. Lay on the floor and put the book on your stomach, on your diaphragm, and push it up and down and build up your diaphragm. And so I don't know, I did it for like 6 months maybe, and once or twice a week, and it really helped. And so we're kind of winding things up. The season's getting ready to start. And he said, now, you've got to do a recital. I said, I'm not doing a recital. No, you've got to do a recital. I said, why? He said, because you need, this kind of caps everything off. I said, okay. So I got a band from first one of the churches there on, I guess, Concord United Methodist. So because I knew their preacher and he was in their praise band, so I wanted to know if they would play. And so we got a place out on Central Avenue, a little event center. And so we made it kind of like a Vol Network kickoff. And we were inviting these people. And it's going to be food and a little music, come, let's get the season started off. But I didn't tell anybody that I was singing. And I didn't tell my family. They had no idea. And so they later came up to me and they said, we thought you were going to announce your retirement at this deal. I said, no. And I guess they were saying, maybe we wish you would have retired from music. But so anyway, we got this little band and got up there and sang about 6 or 7 songs. Bill Williams, who was, of course, at Channel 10 for so long, people don't know, he's a fabulous piano player. And in fact, he started out as like a lounge. He was like Billy Joel before Billy Joel.
Is that right?
Playing in lounges and stuff out in California. Wasn't making a whole lot of money. And then he got the job in Missouri to do news, and then he came to Knoxville, and of course the rest is history. But he was really really was a great piano player. So I got him to come out. He was a part of the band, and he was playing, and we just had a big night. So I did about 6 or 7 songs, and Andy told me, he said, now when you walk out there, don't lock your knees because you'll go right back on your back. He said, keep your knees flexed and pick out a spot in the back of the room and sing to that display. So it's like 100 people. I mean, it was terrifying. But when I got through the first song, it was pretty, I did Alan Jackson and a James Taylor, and I did just a couple of other songs. Junior Brown, you probably don't know who Junior Brown is, but Junior Brown is a great country music singer. And he said the song I sang from Junior Brown was, I got to get up every morning just to say goodnight to you. So he was having problems with his girlfriend. So I did that. And so it was amazing, but everybody came up and congratulated. But that it was, I don't know, it's just another thing about moving your cheese, getting out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And I think you always have to do that. And same thing about coming down to Tennessee. I mean, if I was in my right mind, I probably would have just said, okay, I'm going to go to Muskingum or Denison or Ohio Wesleyan, someplace safe up in Ohio. But I thought, I'm going to challenge myself and see what, how far you can push yourself. And so that's kind of what I did. I got probably got that desire to not be afraid of taking a risk when I was in 2nd grade, I guess, and I was a Cub Scout. And we had to do the Pinewood Derby. Were you a Cub Scout?
I was not.
Okay. So anyway, for you that were not Cub Scouts, you had to do the Pinewood Derby, and they give you a block of wood about 6 inches long, and you turn it into a race car. Well, I said, okay, I'll do that. But my brother, who was 2 years older than I, he was into airplanes. I mean, we had a pilot that lived down the street, and he'd spend his afternoons, I'm out playing football, and he's over there in the pilots trying to figure out how to fly a plane and stuff like that. So he's out in our carport every night, whittling that little race car down. And so he puts varnish on it, and you had to drill out the middle to put lead in it to make sure you had the right weight and everything. And so he's sanding it and then putting more paint on it and lacquering it. It had to be the right weight. And so he put the wheels on it and the decals, and he even got a fan to make a little wind tunnel to see how the wind would go over. I'm going, this is unbelievable. Well, now it comes time for the Pinewood Derby. And so we had a meeting that day at our den mother's house, and our den mother just lived down the street from us, and she was a teacher at the school and everything. And so everybody brought their cars. And so my den mother goes, well, Bob, where's your car? Well, I don't have a car. What do you mean you don't have a car? Well, my brother's got the best car. He's going to beat everybody. I can't beat my brother, so I'm not even going to compete. She said, yes, you are. And so she handed me a block of wood. She said, you got an hour. Make it into a race car. Mm. Well, my brother had 3 months, with he's got a wind tunnel, for God's sakes. So I get my little Cub Scout pocket knife, kind of whittle the sides of it down and sand it a little bit. And we couldn't bore out the middle to put lead in there to get the right way. So we just taped some quarters to the seat with masking tape, got gold paint, spray painted it gold, and stuck the wheels on it. And that was my car. And so I had gold paint all over my hand because the car wasn't even dry yet. So we take it to the Lions Club building there in Fort Worth, Texas. And so they got a big ramp, and they got like 10 cars on the ramp, and you put your car up there and they throw the lever, and here go the cars down the track. Well, my car wins the first race. And of course, everybody that's touched my car has gold paint on their hands, but so we put it back up there again for the semifinals. They flip the switch, car goes, I win the semifinals. So now I'm in the finals against my brother. Mm. And so we get the car back up to the top. We flip the switch, and here they come. And my car's roaring down the track, gets about 3 or 4 feet from the finish line, and the left front wheel falls off. But it skids across the line, and I won the Pinewood Derby.
Is that right?
And I beat my brother. And I got a trophy about this tall that I keep in a spot in my house, and I look at it every day because that den mother taught me such a great lesson that you might not win all the time, but you don't know how good you're going to be unless you compete.
That's right.
And so that's kind of a lesson that has followed me my entire life. So I've never really backed off from a channel. Like when I went to Channel 10 in 1980, I'd never been on TV before. And they go, we want you to be the sports director. I said, I wouldn't hire me. I've never been on TV. What are you doing? I wouldn't be on TV. And they said, well, we think you can do it. And so now I walk out there my first night on the air, and I'm sitting next to Bill Williams, and I'm going, what am I doing out here? I mean, I felt like a fish out of water, but the den mother gave me the confidence that I got to at least try this. It might not last. And then again, Rob, I mean, who in their right mind wants to follow John Ward as the voice of the Tennessee Volunteers? I mean, that's suicide.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. But again, that den mother told me, maybe you're not going to make it, but you got to try.
Right.
I mean, you can't pass up that opportunity. And you couldn't pass up the opportunity at Channel 10.
Right.
So you just do the best job you can. And I know that in your business, you've probably seen lots of people that not sure they can do it, but they're going to give it a shot and see what happens.
That's right. And you've done an amazing job throughout your career, Bob.
Thank you.
I've got to ask you, was there ever a Saturday last fall when you thought, I'd really like to be in that booth again right now?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, who doesn't want to be in Neyland Stadium on Saturday when Tennessee's playing? I mean, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You want I mean, it's such an excitement. You know, Rob, it's amazing. I was doing Jefferson Pilot games for the SEC for 10 years, I guess, and play-by-play and some sideline stuff. And so I very rarely got a Tennessee game. Most of the time I'm in Starkville or I'm in Auburn or in Arkansas or someplace, or Vanderbilt. And you get a much better appreciation for what we have here when you're not here. I mean, all these schools in the SEC have distinct, LSU, Alabama, whatever it is, they all have their distinct traits and things that they believe make them special, and it does. But we have so much here that make this place special. And going to a game at Neyland Stadium, it's an experience. And I got a much bigger appreciation for Neyland Stadium, the University of Tennessee, and what we have here, being away from it. And then when you got the chance to come back and do games there every week, it was just something really special. And you know, I don't know there's ever been a time where I didn't get goosebumps when they ran through the tee. I just, you know, it's just so special. And the fact that I got a chance to play, you know, briefly at Tennessee, but wear the orange shirt and you know, broadcasting is kind of I've always said this, it's the next best thing to playing, because you still get those butterflies in your stomach right before you go on the air. Because I guess it's that fear of failure. Like when you're playing football, you know, you sit in the locker room and say, I got to make sure I run that play. I can't fumble. I can't do this. You know, you get all those things growing through your head before the game, and you try and eliminate all that stuff. So when the game starts, you're just playing. And it's kind of the same thing when you're broadcasting. You got to make sure, well, do we have all the spots in? Do we have all this? And do I know who the starting quarterback for the other team is? And how do you pronounce his name? And all those type things. But then once the game starts, I mean, it just kind of, that's what you've been trained to do. So you just do it. And but you know, and I was also fortunate too, because I got to sit beside a master, John Ward, for 15 years being his spotter. And I had a chance to go to some smaller schools around the area to do games during that time. But I thought, you know, I'm going to learn a lot more sitting next to John, knowing how to do this. And John would always tell us that, you know, you earn your money when things are going bad, and you don't earn your money when things are going. And if it's going good, anybody can do it. And so he always made sure that we were prepared for things if they went off the tracks a little bit. You know, you lose power or you get a rain delay or whatever. That's when you earn your money. And he'd always tell us that I don't need you excited about the Alabama game. I need you prepared. Be prepared. Right. And he also did a thing, too, that stuck with us, that you could make one mistake, but better not make that same mistake twice, or you're gone. And he had another trait, too, which I thought made you concentrate more. When I first started spotting for him back in the 70s, there were very few games on television, maybe one or two a year at most. But then as you get into the 80s, then more and more games are getting on TV. He would never let us have a monitor in the booth. He didn't, as a spotter, you want to make sure you're getting it right, but he didn't have the monitor there because he didn't want me relying on the monitor.
Yeah.
He said, we're radio guys. We get it right the first time. Concentrate.
Wow.
Concentrate and get it right the first time. So that put a lot of pressure on you to make sure that you, and the spotter is the guy that sits next to the play-by-play guy and kind of helps him, who made a good block or who deflected a pass. Because the play-by-play guy is concentrating on the ball so much that, you're a guy that, whether this safety came over to help or whatever. So you could kind of help him add to the play. And my favorite story about John was we were playing Washington State in 1982. And Washington State had a quarterback by the name of Samoa. And of course, there was no TV or film on it, back then. We didn't know. But the rumor was about Samoa was he could throw equally well with both hands. And so before the game, John says, get your binoculars during warm-ups and see if he's actually throwing with both hands. I said, okay. Well, sure enough, he rolls out right, throws it 50 yards, rolls out left, throws it 50 yards.
Wow.
Yeah. And so anyway, we're doing the broadcast, and I'm sitting here, and John's next to me, and then Bill Anderson's down at the end, and Russ Bebb's our statistician. And so John's doing the play-by-play, and he said it's 3rd down and 3. Washington State has the ball at the Tennessee 38-yard line. And he said that the Tennessee defense will be tested here because the Washington State quarterback, Samoa, can throw equally well with both hands. He can roll out left or right and throw equally well. He's amphibious. And John never broke stride. I just started, and Bill Anderson's down. What did you say he was? What was that? And I'm thinking there's some guy in his pickup truck down in Ooltewah driving around, said, Martha, we can't win this game. John says he got an amphibious quarterback. How are we going to win this game? But John was brilliant. I mean, he had his law degree, never practiced law, but the law degree helped him organize and be more efficient, and helped him with his verbiage, with words and things like that. I mean, really, he understood the English language and was very particular about that stuff. So I learned so much from him. And also when Lindsey Nelson retired from, he did the Mets for so long, but he ended up in Notre Dame football and all the other stuff. But he ended up his career doing the San Francisco Giants. And I asked him one time, I said, Lindsey, why did you do the Giants? He said, because I just want to live in San Francisco. And I never lived out there. I want to live on the West Coast. Now I retired, and then his wife got sick, and then he moved back up here, and he lived up on Cherokee Bluff, looking right over the campus. And he said he'd get up every morning. He'd get his newspaper and a cup of coffee. He'd go out on his back porch. He would salute the general, and then he'd start his day. And but he started doing these things called Lindsey at Large for Channel 10 after he retired. He was also teaching a class at UT. But he did these things called, it was like, if you remember Andy Rooney from 60 Minutes, he did those little 3-minute vignettes about different things. Well, Lindsey did these things called Lindsey at Large, and it wasn't about sports. It was, why is Gay Street named Gay Street? Why is Henley Street named Henley Street? Where is General Nealon buried? What about the organ at the Tennessee Theater? All this stuff about Knoxville that most of us don't really know much about. And these things were 3 minutes long. And Lindsey would come in the afternoon, and they'd go out to the spot, they'd come up to Gay Street, and they'd shoot the spot. One take, 3 minutes, you could set your clock to it. It was one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen in my life. But I would come into my office at Channel 10, I'm 27, 26 years old, something like that. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And you walk in there in the afternoon, I'm just getting started, and Lindsey Nelson sitting there reading the newspaper. I mean, what a wealth of information. Wow. And so there used to be a Rica's on 17th over here. And when Lindsey's wife died, he'd go over there and have dinner some nights. And so sometimes if I didn't have something else to do, I would drive by there after I got off the 620 Sportscast and see if Lindsey was in there sitting by himself. And if he was, I'd kind of barge in and try and buy his dinner or have dinner with him. And of course, he'd never let me buy it, but we'd sit there and talk. But we wouldn't talk about sports. We talked about how to be a pro and how you should approach things, how to do things the right way, how to treat people. And I always remembered that. And I learned so many life lessons from Lindsey. He told me once, he said, don't take a job for money, take it for passion. He said, because if you don't have the passion, you're going to get bored awfully quick. And he said, if you're in broadcasting, it maybe it's not your passion, it's the passion of the people that are listening. Yeah. If nobody's listening, it's not a lot of fun. He said, don't worry about the money when you take a job. He said, when you get good enough, they'll throw it at you. And then, of course, he wore those god-awful sport coats. And he said, and if you don't have any talent, dress funny. So I asked him, went up there on Cherokee Bluff with him one time, and he just had closet after closet of these horrible sport coats. I mean, just hideous looking, but he loved them. And because that was his trademark with the Mets, the uglier the sport coat, the better. And so I said, what's your favorite sport coat? And he went over, he picked out this green paisley, yellow stripe, just, I couldn't imagine anything more hideous looking. And I said, well, what's the story on this one? He said, well, I was walking through the garment district there in New York one time, and I walked by this drapery shop, and I saw this fabulous looking material in the window. And I asked the proprietor, I said, could you make that into a sport coat? And the proprietor said, well, yes, we can, but why? I mean, why would you want to do that? He said, but it was wonderful. I could do the Mets game in the afternoon, put on a bow tie, and go to the Met at night. So it was great. But I, so I had two of the all-time greats kind of as my mentors, which was really, I was doing Knoxville Blue Jay baseball games at old Bill Meyer Stadium, and Lindsey would come out, just be around the players. And the old guys, all the old managers and coaches knew exactly who he was. The young players, the 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, they had no idea. But it was just fun to watch him interact with some of the old coaches and the managers, and they'd be telling stories. And I'd always beg him, said selfishly, Lindsey, why don't you come up and sit in the booth with me and do an inning? I just loved it. No. I said, this is your time. This is your time. I've already had my time. But he would.
Is that where you got started, Bob?
Basically,
in broadcasting.
Yeah. Well, I got started at WIBK. How it started was I'd done playing football, and so it was at the end of I guess maybe right before school started or something like that. So a bunch of us. No, I guess it was in the summer. I forget when. I was going to summer school, I guess, and so a bunch of us went over to Bill Meyer Stadium one night to see the old Knoxville Sox play back when they were the White Sox affiliate. And so we were sitting behind the dugout, and we were yelling, rooting for the team and all that kind of stuff, carrying on like college kids do. And suddenly the usher came up and said, men, you can't sit in these seats. So well, these are box seats. There's like 400 people at the game. These are box seats. I said, they look like just rusted out folding chairs here behind the dugout. He said, these are more expensive. Well, so how much more expensive are these? So said the box seats are 50 cents more than the other seats. I think the regular tickets were $4 and these were $4.50 or something like that. This would have been 75, I guess. Well, we were outraged. I mean, how could they make college kids pay, $4.50 to go to a baseball game? So I go, like a knucklehead, I go storming into the owner's ticket office. And I meet Neil Ridley, who's the owner of the team. He also owns Cena's Laundry there on Magnolia. And so I'm talking about how outraged I am about having to pay this extra 50 cents to sit in the box seat. And we talked, and before I left, I talked myself into a summer job. So I was the assistant general manager of the Knoxville Sox. I was the number 2 man on a 2-man staff. And so Bill Reap was our general manager. He was about 75 years old. He knew everybody in baseball, just a career baseball guy. But I was his assistant. So I'd put the flag up. I'd take guys to the doctor. I would, if it rained, we didn't have a tarp, so I raked the field.
Watered the grass.
Did everything. So, but I loved it. I mean, I thought it was because I'm around ball play, and a bunch of those players from those Knoxville teams went on to the White Sox, to the major leagues. And that was one of the big thrills when one of your buddies got a chance to go to the big leagues. So I loved that job, but nobody was showing up at the games. And so I thought, I was making $100 a week. And I thought, and working about 80 hours a week, because I was there from 9 in the morning until midnight. And plus then I was going to school and I'm doing all this other stuff. And, but I used to write these little 30-second voicers, and I'd call them into any radio station that would answer the phone. Like Mike Squires tonight in a 3-run homer in the 8th inning as the Knoxville Sox rallied to beat the Savannah Braves. And, tomorrow night they play game 2 of the series at 7:30 at Bill Meyer Stadium, something like that. 30 seconds in length. But I called them into all the radio stations because back then everybody had a nighttime DJ. And WIBK would play those reports. And so out of the blue, I guess in 1974, I get a call from Paul Lyle, who was the sports director at WIBK. And he said, listen, we're looking for a part-time sports guy. And we run your reports in the morning. You sound pretty good. Would you want to do part-time sports here? I said, sure. So now I'm going to school. I'm working for the Knoxville Sox, and I'm working part-time at WIVK and loving life. You know, just it was just great. I mean, it's kind of everything. And so when I graduated, I was doing that till I graduated in 78. Well, I also, in the meantime, picked up the Lady Vols at that time, because that was back in the days when nobody really cared much about women's basketball at all. And 100 people at Stokely would be a good night. I got paid $15 a game to do the games. And if we had a road trip, I had to pay my own gas out of that if I didn't ride the bus with the team. So, but anyway, I'm doing all of that. But now I graduate and I got to start making some money. And so Bobby Denton was the general manager at WIVK, of course, a longtime PA voice at Neyland Stadium. And so he's taken a break during the newscast at 6 o'clock, and I just finished my afternoon sportscast. I'm going to Nashville to get a baseball job because the baseball convention was there at Opryland. And so Denton goes, "Where are you going, hotshot?" And I said, "Well, I'm going over to Nashville to get a baseball job." "Why?" I said, "Well, I've got to make some money. I'm getting ready to get married, and you're not paying me any money here. I'm starving working for you." And he said, "Well, I tell you what, we just, because I'm not full-time, I'm still part-time." And he goes, "We just bought a radio station over there in Nashville, KDA, said, we're going to send our sports director here, Paul Lyle, over there to be the sports director. Why don't you stay here and be our sports director?" I said, "Well, do I get benefits? Do I get health?" And, "Oh, yeah, you'll get all of that. Talk to the PR people or HR people and you'll get all that." Okay. Well, that was the difference between me going to Nashville and trying to have a job and for being the general manager of the Chicago White Sox, or staying here and being in radio. Just that one conversation. If Bobby hadn't been out there smoking a cigar, I would have gone to Nashville, and who knows what would have happened. So, you know, things work out. You know, they just work out, and you get in those forks. And I had to make a split-second decision. I said, "Well, this is a guaranteed job. I don't have a guaranteed job in Nashville. I'll take this one and see how long it lasts." So, anyway.
Well, that wraps up part 1 of this special series from First Century Bank Studios. We hope you enjoyed these stories as much as we did. Now, make sure you're subscribed and following so you don't miss part 2, where Rob Barger and Bob Kesling keep the conversation going. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.